We know relatively few things about the Achaemenid paradise gardens, but the few things we do know are very suggestive. In the first place, there's the word itself, which in Old Persian literally denotes an encircling wall that carves off some area of space outside normal existence. And on the far side of the walls is mundane, ordinary reality, but inside is something quite different, an entirely different environment and an entirely different way of life. We also know that whatever it was that these gardens represented, the rest of the world took them as absolutely extraordinary. And we know that because they adopted the word from Old Persian, which penetrates as a loan word into most of the ancient languages of the Middle East, and ultimately all of the languages of Europe via Greek and Latin. These other nations had no word to describe their impression of the Persian gardens, and so they adopted the Old Persian word itself. The third thing we know about them comes from the biblical references to paradise, making use of the Iranian terminology. And there we find it associated with the original state of perfection as God intended before anything had gone wrong in the universe. It's the ideal realization of absolute peace, perfection, happiness, abundance, good order, and well-being. The third thing we know comes from the Greek sources, the historian Xenophon and others, who said a bit about the Persian gardens. And what they consistently say is that within these gardens, the Persians made an attempt to include all of the species of plants and all of the species of animals. That is to say, they tried to achieve a totality, a harmony of all the various diverse kinds of life that is found across the world. We have one garden that has been archaeologically excavated, and that shows that there was serious concern for irrigation, abundant water, geometric regulation of the spaces to create a harmonious, satisfying, aesthetically, lush and lovely space. There was considerable attention to creating shade and spaces where one could relax and enjoy the spectacle of all the species of plants and animals that were present there. And there was probably great attention to the arrangement of color and fragrance to create a maximum of pleasure. These were sites of recreation for the Persian nobility. And I think one needs to take the notion of recreation quite literally. There is a wish to go back to the perfect state that God intended for the world at the moment of creation. And here I've tried to connect the Persian gardens to what we're told of the Persian creation myth, which figures in as the first paragraph of better than half of all the inscriptions that the Achaemenids left us. And what these inscriptions all tell us is that in the beginning, the supreme deity, who's known as Ahura Mazda, the wise Lord, created four things: earth, sky, humanity, and what's referred to as happiness for humanity. Now, I take it as significant that all these are described in the singular. There's only one earth, one sky, one humanity, and one total happiness, which I think is meant to describe all the good things in existence that bring pleasure and contentment. The myth goes further, and it describes how that original perfect state was disrupted when something it refers to as the lie, falsehood, enters creation. Falsehood is theorized as disrupting that original perfection, and in particular, disrupting that original unity, because although there's only one truth, there's an infinite number of lies that can be told. And when there are lies, it follows that there are divisions within humanity. People adopt different positions, they begin to quarrel with one another, they begin to think of themselves as different from one another, they begin to lie to one another and cheat one another and cause resentment and disharmony, and that original state of perfect happiness is shattered. And within that, we get the emergence of different groups, different nations, different races, different kinds of people who go to war with one another and have troubled relations of various sorts, and who come to inhabit different parts of the one earth that they come to think of as their territory, each of which has some nice things, which is to say a piece of the original total perfect happiness. What I understand the Persians to have been trying to effect with their gardens was to restore that original perfect unitary state by bringing together all the different species of plants and animals that they possibly could assemble. I think it's part of their general imperial ambition, which was similarly to reunite all the world's peoples and all the world's territories as part of one entity under the Persian king, living in perfect peace, enjoying perfect happiness, having reunited all of the world's peoples, plants, animals in a state of absolute peace, calm, tranquility, truth, good faith, good humor, enjoyment, relaxation, as they argue, God originally intended, thus reversing all of the divisions and conflicts and disharmony that the lie introduced. As part of their imperial expansion, they gathered more and more territory, brought together more and more peoples, had imported to their capital more and more of the exotic fruits and vegetables and trees and animals that they found in the various territories that became part of the empire. And the reliefs at their palaces showed the various peoples of the empire bringing as tribute their exotic animals, giraffes, camels, tigers, sheep of different sizes and shapes and so forth, and different plants, palm trees and date trees and fig trees and whatnot. And all of their most precious substances, gold, ivory, cedar from Lebanon, marble, etc., to concentrate them at the center so that they could be brought together in these gardens, which would be at the same time a reminiscence of the way the world was supposed to be and a foreshadowing of the way the world will be once the empire completes its project and unites all peoples and all earth together in perfect harmony. And at the same time, I have the sense that these gardens were among the most gorgeous and idealistic and brilliant and lovely creations the world has ever known, as is recognized by the wonder they created in everyone who saw or heard about them. And at the same time, they are a justification and a stimulus for imperial expansion, domination, and extraction, whereby the Achaemenid Persians exercised power, including armed force and lethal violence against all the other peoples of the globe. I take the gardens as among the most ambiguous and ambivalent realizations of the human imagination, that is known to history. And there's something well worth pondering and contemplating at great length and detail. They teach us a lot.